Hey everyone, it's Dr. DeCubellis from This Must Be the Place, and today I'm joined with Matt Herbeck from Kramer and Herbeck. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me. As always, appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. We always have great conversations and talk about good topics, and what I really want to talk about today is estate planning. I think it's something that when you hear that, a lot of people don't know what that really means and really don't understand why it's important. So if you can walk me through a little bit about what it is, why it's important, and really what it's even for.
Absolutely. So estate planning is basically your way of saying, hey, everything I've worked for in my life, everything I've done, I want to protect that and ultimately then disperse it in some way, shape, or form to either my loved ones, friends, charities, however you want to really kind of convey what you've worked so hard for during your life is really what your estate planning is. You're planning to do with what you have in your estate. So to break it down that easily, there's a lot of items within those. So there's a lot of areas, whether it's a will, a trust, there's so many aspects then of those items. There's living trust, there's living will, there's just so many different aspects then that kind of carry into those areas. So ultimately what our firm does is we take in kind of information and what the individual comes in and says, hey, this is what I have, this is what I'd like to do with this kind of stuff, and then we review that and then we apply it in the best way, shape, or form that that person and kind of what they're looking for, so that they get really what they'd like and that their heirs ultimately get what the individual would like them to get, and hopefully with as little as fighting as possible, because we all know that unfortunately a lot of times when it comes to estate planning and money being involved, that sometimes people brings out the not so happy sides of people, and we try to avoid that. So we make kind of these plans solid, so that ultimately the family knows exactly what they're essentially receiving and what they should be getting from their heir.
That makes sense. Now, just to be a little bit more clear too, so a will would be part of an estate planning, but estate planning is a more like robust or comprehensive type of thing, correct?
Exactly, yeah. The estate planning is the overall like general picture. Then within that estate planning, there's different elements and different ways in which you can protect those assets and essentially then bequeath them to your heirs.
And with that, depending on everyone's situation, would depend on what they would need in that estate planning. So that's why it's really worth sitting down, talking with someone, finding out what really meets your needs, because it depends on what assets you are or have, what you are, who you're trying to pass it to, what you're trying to do, and all that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And we always say, kind of one of the things that a lot of people ask, they say, do I need this? Well, it's not 100% something you have to have. If you don't do any estate planning during your life, that's fine. What ends up happening then is goes towards what's called intestate succession. Intestate succession is the way in which the Illinois government, in our case, ultimately disperses your estate according to the law and how the law is written. Well, if you like the way Illinois runs their policies and politics and everything, then great. You're probably right down the road of what you want. If you disagree with some of those things, then ultimately I would say you probably want to make your own plan rather than allowing the state to do it their way.
Well, and the other thing about that too is, even though you might agree with the state plans now, in 10, 15, 20 years, there's no saying that they won't change.
Yeah.
So it's always good to put what you actually want in writing.
That's a big thing. The tax code's always changing. A lot of people have significant wealth, and it affects certain amounts of wealth differently than others. So that's, again, something where our firm and ultimately good estate planning attorneys are going to essentially review that and make sure that, hey, exactly what you anticipate from a tax standpoint too. From a, hey, if I give this to this relative, how's this going to play out? If this goes here, how's that going to play out? And that's, again, something else that we're essentially there to provide.
Makes a lot of sense, and as you can kind of see, there's a lot that goes into it, and it really is individualized. It depends on your specific situation, what you need, what your family needs, and that's why it's important to talk with an attorney about that, because you don't want to have it to where it's just like, hey, we'll see what happens when I die, everything's going to go where it goes.
Give it a shot.
Yeah, you really want to make sure everything's kind of laid out, and that way by doing that, you can prevent a lot of that fighting and things that can happen afterwards, because we want to make the transition as peaceful as possible, because it is ultimately a time of a lot of stress.
Mourning and a lot of stress, absolutely. And that's one of those things too. It's not just the money, it's also just the fact that they've lost somebody that's close to them. So it creates that stress level where people don't want to have to deal with this. If you truly work so hard to provide something for your family that you want to give to them, you want to give that to them in the easiest manner possible. You don't want to make them have additional problems and additional issues that they have to deal with, or just infighting and stuff because it wasn't made in that way. So again, want to give yourself, or you want to give a gift to your family, give it to them in the best way you can.
Yeah, and I mean sometimes too, even part of you hear people run into problems of getting money released to even pay for the funeral.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
and that's a, like we talked about stress, that's an even higher stress that should not happen.
Yeah, and we would ultimately get into more avenues because there's certain ways you can avoid certain scenarios such as that, whether it's avoiding probate by having a trust in lieu of a will, or other things again. And we would obviously make our approach with our clients very specialized to exactly what they're looking for.
So there's a lot that goes into it, but that's why it's important to go over it all at a time when everyone's in the right mind, make sure plans are laid out, and you have to talk with an expert too. So contact information is below. Definitely get in touch with him. He'll be able to walk you through kind of what you need, find out what you are after, and then put everything together. So make sure you reach out to Matt. Contacts below, and he'll walk you through. Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely. Thanks, Doc. Appreciate it.
No problem.